Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block and today's segment of First Home Alliance. I'm your host, Larry Laws, here to share with you the great things First Home Alliance is doing in the community, answer questions you may have about housing, and to empower you with the knowledge to help make your dream of homeownership a success. On today's episode of First Home Alliance, we will discuss in detail the FHA Back to Work program. Now, I will introduce to you our special guest that is doing some amazing things in the area of housing. She has many years of experience that allow her to serve in numerous capacities, ranging from financial coach, homebuyer education instructor, foreclosure intervention and default counselor, a qualified underwriter for HUD, to director. She is a graduate of Arizona State University. Presently, she serves as Director of Housing for Housing Options and Planning Enterprises Incorporated, also known as HOPE. Please welcome to our show, Jan McNerney. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the gesture.
Yes, well, thank you for coming in today for the interview to share with our audience information about this new program. Mm-hmm. But before we get started, you have lengthy credentials. But I would like for you to just tell us a little bit more about you, and actually, what do you do?
I am currently the Housing Director for Housing Options and Planning Enterprises in Oxon Hill, Maryland. I began my career in nonprofit in about 2004 when I was still in Texas. I worked for a NeighborWorks organization there. Before that, I have had probably about 25 to 30 years of experience as a mortgage banker. I started my career as a processor and then graduated into the various occupations that I've had throughout the years. I'm still considered a lender as I have my NMLS license.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Super. And so with those and that's lengthy experience, what do you do now? What actually do you do on a daily basis?
Well, as the housing director, I'm responsible for all the programs, all the program directives that come to us by any of the government agencies. I do all the reporting systems for housing options, and then I also come out with some other important programs that we could utilize in Oxon Hill and in Southern Maryland.
Okay, mm-hmm. And you did mention an organization there, HOPE. What is HOPE's mission?
HOPE's mission basically started in about 2005. Our executive director is Donna Hurley, and she basically has always told us that the need for our particular area is counseling, is education, is being an advocate, and then going out and being community developers. And that's exactly what the mission is for our organization.
Okay, and I understand that you do both the pre-purchase, we call it, and also the post-purchase. Could you share with us, maybe you have different names than pre-purchase, post-purchase. Let us know the names of those programs that you have.
Well, in our organization, the pre-purchase is called Fast Track.
Okay.
We have two separate lines of business, if you will, for that particular. We have eHome America, which is a NeighborWorks program, and then we also have our 8-hour class that we do. We currently do it 2 times during the month, and now, luckily enough for us, we will be adding another. So we will have 3 Saturday classes that are going to be in Maryland.
Okay, and I also understand that this training is actually, the organization is HUD approved, and so this training, is followed through with the guidance from HUD. How do your organization align, or what is the partnership or working relationship with HUD?
Well, I think currently as a HUD certified counseling agency, we have to adhere to all of the guidelines that are necessary to operate under their criteria. The important thing that I want the general public to understand is that as housing counselors, our occupations are definitely changing. In the near future, what we're going to be having is more certifications and more licensing addition, as if we were realtors or bankers. And what that's going to allow is a more professional attitude that we housing counselors will have to adhere to certain criteria.
Okay. And with that information about the new certification, what credibility do you think that will bring to housing counselors?
Well, I think in years past, housing counseling has been perhaps termed an enemy of the particular lines of business like realtors, or especially with banking, because we're not there necessarily to change the minds of an individual, whether they purchase or whether they get financial literacy. But what we are trying to do is to make the client, consumer, better at being good advocates of home ownership or of financial literacy. That's the most important part about what we do.
Okay. All right. And so with this financial literacy and also home ownership, in your organization, do you work with a team, or is this something that you do as an individual?
Sir, I currently have 3 certified counselors that are on our staff. One of them is bilingual. They are all senior counselors. I also have 2 admins, and right now we have 1 receptionist. And so of course, Donna Hurley, who's the executive director. We have an economic development vice president who has started with our company. His name is Jermaine Badgett. And so that team has been the backbone, if you will, to our organization.
Okay, and I know today's topic is going to focus on this FHA program, Back to Work. But before we get into the program, we're going to get some of the details a little bit later.
Okay.
And this is your opinion. In your opinion, why was this program designed? Why would HUD or FHA design this type of program?
Well, I think that if you look at our economy, one of the biggest building blocks has always been housing. The fastest way to get our economy back into focus, if you will, is to get some individuals who, under no circumstances of their own, they happen to get into a financial situation where they've lost their homes. They needed to qualify rather quickly so that we could move some of our real estate off of the books of some of the banks. That being said, it is more important that those people who have come out of that economic hardship be good stewards and understand where what we call their new normal is as far as financial literacy.
Yes, and so it seemed that this is for people that have went through some financial hardship,
yes,
some circumstances beyond their control.
Right.
You know, how do you reach out to these people? How can you find those? And let us know, how do you outreach to bring them into your door?
Well, in our particular case, I am luckily enough having certain partnerships with banks that are mortgage lenders that currently do this particular program. As an underwriter, it's always nice to be able to talk the language of the lender.
Correct.
And so I have been really lucky in just simply by word of mouth, people knowing where I am. And that's the way we've been doing it. Now, in coming months, there are educational seminars and what have you that are strictly going to surround the Back to Work program. We're also going to start to have lunch and learns throughout Maryland that I think we need to do a better job of getting this program out.
Okay, and I guess in briefing this program in general, what would be a good definition for the FHA Back to Work?
Well, it's definitely someone who has come out of an economic hardship due to their economic circumstances. And it is a way for a borrower who has basically had to start over, a faster way if they can prove their economic hardship to be able to purchase in a faster track than what HUD guidelines would necessarily have.
Okay. All right, and so, and sticking with that FHA and a general discussion about the FHA, we want to know there are some factors that are taken in consideration that an underwriter would examine, for someone. And so, what are the, I guess, 2 of the most important factors that is taken in consideration for this program?
Well, the number 1 factor, of course, is having to prove the economic hardship. And if you can picture a small wheel where the hub of the wheel is the economic hardship, That happens to be the hardest part, where lenders are having to come up with that criteria. For instance, one of the guidelines specifically says that an individual who has gone through this economic hardship has had to have a loss of income of about 20% in the 6 months that they had this. That criteria is very hard. Once it is proven, however, then the spokes go out to such things as credit, judgments, anything else that is from the center spoke of that particular economic hardship.
Okay. And have you, in your office, have you in the last 12 months actually had any of these cases that you're actually working maybe, or success on these?
I do. Thank you very much for asking that question. I currently have 27 families that have come into our office. My counseling sessions, as with yours, centers around financial capabilities. I want everybody to understand that when the criteria from HUD simply says that they can do the housing counseling online, they can do it either in person, and the minimum, and I repeat that, the minimum is an hour. I in particular have them come in for quite some time. Our information, if you will, our certification and our letters that are part of the criteria that we as housing counselors have to give, go into the file and is given to HUD. So it's important for me to be able to notify HUD that yes, I have checked these folks out. They understand what happened to them, because that's part of the criteria that I have to discover and write, and that all of my notes also can be used for HUD if they choose to have, you know, that information. So my counseling session, as with yours, I continue to say, is all around financial literacy. They have come out of a huge economic hardship. So simply being able to save money is not necessarily part of the criteria.
Okay. And hold that thought. We're going to get to more of the criteria and details on the FHA back to work right after the break. We're coming up on the break, but before we go, I would like to remind you that both HUD, HOPE, and First Home Alliance are both HUD-approved housing counseling agencies serving the National Capital Area. If you're a first-time home buyer, a homeowner struggling to make mortgages, or someone just seeking financial literacy education, I encourage you to check the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development website for a HUD-approved agency in your area that can help you successfully live the dream of homeownership and financial fitness. We will be right back after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block in today's segment of First Home Alliance with our special guest, Jan McNerney. Jan, before the break, we was talking about the Back to Work program, and we was getting a little bit deeper in there so we could explain to our audience exactly, the eligibility for the program. And now we want to talk about qualifying. What does the borrower need to demonstrate to qualify?
Well, as I spoke previous to this, there is a huge segment that has to be proven, and that has to do with loss of income. And that loss of income is about 20%. There aren't a lot of lenders, by the way, that are doing this. So if an individual in your audience wishes to go ahead and look for the Back to Work program, they're going to have to call a couple of lenders to find out if they do the program. Currently, it is a manually underwritten loan. The criteria coming from HUD is one thing, but the credit overlays that each mortgage company will put on each file, it remains to be, they have to go ahead and qualify. Because remember, on a manual underwrite, we underwriters simply get to look at the criteria, make sure that it matches the mortgagee letter, and then write off on the loan. And that takes a little bit of doing. There are verifications of employment, for instance, that are sent out for previous occupations to verify. Now, if it happens to be a company that's out of business, then most mortgage companies try to do their due diligence and try to find out as much information on this company that they can. So there's always this background of information that has to be allocated, and it's really going to depend upon the underwriting criteria. But that's what that's what the basis of it is the income.
Okay. And so that is the dealing with the mortgage loan officer,
right,
the banker that is working with that end. But you also mentioned housing counseling. And
so that's the most exciting part, and thank you very much. As housing counselors, I think we need to be applauded for the fact that HUD recognizes, as well as the industry is beginning to recognize the fact that housing counseling is a huge criteria that is necessary. We, in years past, even with congressional help, have not seen as much support as we're getting now. But that's the important part of it. With housing counseling, the guideline from HUD says that you have to have counseling 30 days up to 6 months before you purchase your house. And here's what I want to make sure that the audience realizes. It's better to get into a housing counseling agency and begin to discuss things like credit, judgments, bankruptcies, deed in lieu of, whatever criteria we can discover at that particular time, so that we can start going over those type of things so that it doesn't affect them going on. It is important also to note that we underwriters do something really suspicious. We take a look at a borrower who has gone through an economic hardship, but we look at what they were doing before the hardship, we look at the hardship, and then we look at something afterwards. So in other words, what we're hoping as underwriters is that whatever economic hardship has just happened is a simple blip in time, but they were good consumers before, and they will be super, super consumers afterwards.
Okay. And could you cover a little bit more in detail on maybe that counseling session and some of the things that the counselor covers in detail?
Okay. I can speak to my agency because I set up the program. Yes. But I basically have them come in, and I require 3 months worth of bank statements. I look at what we term a critical budget, okay, and then we go over spending habits and savings plans. I'm not, at this particular point, really concerned about the retirement situation, but I am concerned about living within their budget, understanding that what their new normal is purchasing a home again, and the importance of keeping that. One of the things that we don't want to see a consumer do is get into something called first payment default, which yes, means that they're already in economic trouble before we even get them into the first payment that they make.
Okay. All right. And what are some of the housing options in this program?
Well, there really aren't very many housing criteria for housing, other than I would say make sure that the lender gives you the criteria of if you wanted to buy, say for instance, a condo, or if you're doing a short sale, or you're doing something to that effect, that you give yourself enough time to do all of that.
Okay. All right. And What happened? I understand you have this counseling session, and how long does this? Is it a one-time visit? Does it span over a 30-day period? How long does it span?
Well, I can give you an example of what I have currently. I have two families that are really in need of some extra TLC. But the session for us at Housing Options is 2 hours, and I do that for the simple reason is because in the analysis of finding what the economic hardship was, I tend to go ahead and have them give me their hardship letter, document exactly what happened, and then the rest of it basically is making sure that, especially if it's a couple, that they are both on what we call the same page for how they spend their money. And in some cases, we have a little bit of difficulty with individuals, and so those, as a matter of fact, the two clients that I have that are ongoing are in that manner. We're just having to get on the same page about money.
Okay.
Yeah.
And once you, I guess, finish the counseling and they receive their certificate, they have their letter as well, and now they are, what happens after that?
Well, I follow back up with those individuals monthly for the first 6 months, and then I go to quarterly. My staff calls it stalking, but I think it's important for me to make sure that they're on the right track. After a year, usually, I'm hoping that they have become accustomed, because remember, it takes 30 days to change a habit, and money seems to be the hardest of everything to change.
Yes. Now, can you think maybe a specific, in reference to maybe giving us a little detail, no, of course, no names or where a person work or anything like that, that would help the audience to relate to, maybe it could be them or a family member or someone in their community for that. Give us a specific example of circumstances that a person have experienced and that have maybe in the program or have successfully completed the program and well on their homeownership. Oh,
it's a great question. I had an individual who was living in Florida, was working for one of the Florida agencies, and gradually their funding became null and void, and so consequently she had to make the decision to go ahead and short sale. She said that was the most painful episode that she has ever had. She came up to Maryland, has successfully found employment. As a matter of fact, about 2 times of what she was making in Florida, which was an easy economic thing to do. I had her write the hardship letter. I did double check and had her give me some pay stubs, and whatever the company that she was with in Florida naturally is gone. So I was able to somewhat document what she had. She's got a super savings plan right now, and she's going to be getting married. So I think it's a win-win for us all. Now, the most difficult case that I have is that I have an individual who has gone through sequestration, and that one is going to be a little harder to prove as far as economic hardship. And so that one we're having to stress over, and he has been in my office for almost 6 months while we try to piece that file together.
Okay. Well, it sounds like this is a job, a service, I should say, that it means a lot to you.
It does.
Yes, and really appreciate the work that you're doing. Now, if a person wanted to find out more about this program, what are some suggested places to find out information?
Well, the first place I would go ahead and check with Housing and Urban Development. I would also check with the housing counseling agencies that do back to work. Not all of us, I'm told, do the back to work program because, as I have just described and you have experienced, it is labor intensive. And so, you know, all of us have different programs, by the way. So I would find those 2 sources. And then like I said, we have some local things that are happening, at least in Maryland, and I'm hoping that through your efforts with this program and through other programs such as this, people will get the word out. We do have a let's see, expiration date, if you will, as of 2016.
Yes. Okay. And so if someone wanted to get in contact with your organization, how would they find out information about your organization?
I appreciate that gesture. Thank you very much. The telephone number for us over in Maryland is 301-567-3330. Our name, once again, is Housing Options and Planning Enterprises, Oxon Hill, Maryland.
Super. We're nearing the conclusion of our show. But before we close, Jan, I would like to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for the invitation. I sincerely appreciate it.
Yes. And I'd like to see you back here again. You did a great job.
Oh, my heavens.
Okay. Thank you. Our guest today highlighted details about the FHA Back to Work program. She explained how you can become a homeowner once again after losing your home due to extenuating circumstances. If you have further questions about the FHA Back to Work program, contact Jan at HOPE and visit the HOPE website for additional information for all the services they provide. Now we will go to our inbox. We'll check our inbox. This is where we share a recent question sent to us from our viewing audience in reference to housing and financial education as it relates to homeownership. Today's question comes from Arlington, Virginia. What is a good credit score? My first response would be the highest score you can get. Without getting too deep into credit scoring, I would say that FICO scores range from 300 to 850, where 850 is considered to be the best score achievable. Although the three credit bureaus use different methods to determine a credit score, the formulas they use are not exactly the same, and your credit score will vary from bureau to bureau. A good credit score is generally considered to be 720 or higher. For more information about credit scores, please visit myfico.com. If you have a question concerning financial education or homeownership, simply email your question to our inbox at help@firsthomealliance.org and tune in to our next show to see if your question was selected to be shared with our audience. If you want to find out more about the services that First Home Alliance provides, visit our website. Thank you for watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of First Home Alliance. I am Larry Laws, reminding you that we are here to empower you with knowledge to help you successfully live the dream of homeownership.